There is a disease that has killed over 40 million people. It destroys the immune system slowly, quietly from the inside. It turns the body against itself. It leaves a person vulnerable to infections that a healthy immune system would brush off without effort. It has no cure, and for most of the 20th century, nobody knew it existed. AIDS appeared to come from nowhere. In the early 1980s, doctors in New York and Los Angeles started seeing young men dying from unusual infections, pneumonia that healthy people don't get, a rare skin cancer called Kaposi's sarcoma, fungal infections that should have been nothing. These were not sick people. These were young, otherwise healthy men, and their immune systems were simply gone. The disease spread. The panic spread faster. Within years, it had a name: HIV, AIDS. And with that name came a question that nobody at the time had the tools to fully answer. Where did this come from? And more unsettling still, had something like this happened before? The answer to that second question is yes. But the full story goes back much further than most people realize, further than recorded history, further than ancient Egypt or Greece. It goes back to the forests of Central Africa, millions of years before the first human ever walked upright. To understand whether ancient humans got AIDS, you first have to understand what HIV actually is and where it came from. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. It is a retrovirus. That means instead of just infecting cells and making copies of itself the normal way, it actually inserts its own genetic material directly into the DNA of the host cell. It becomes part of you. It hides inside your own genome. The immune system cannot easily find it because it is wearing your own cells like a disguise. HIV attacks a specific type of immune cell called a CD4 T cell. These cells are essentially the coordinators of the immune response. When HIV destroys enough of them, the immune system collapses. The body can no longer fight off infections it would normally handle without any effort. That collapse is what we call AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. AIDS is not the virus itself. AIDS is what happens when the virus has done enough damage. Now here is where the story gets ancient. HIV did not start in humans. It jumped to us from another species. This kind of jump has a name. Scientists call it zoonotic transmission. And HIV is one of the most well-studied examples of it ever documented. The human version of the virus, HIV-1, is directly descended from a virus called SIV, Simian Immunodeficiency Virus. SIV infects non-human primates, chimpanzees, gorillas, monkeys. And here is the critical detail. SIV has been infecting these animals for an extraordinarily long time. Not decades, not centuries, millions of years. Researchers studying SIV in chimpanzees and other primates have found evidence that these viruses have been co-evolving with their primate hosts for somewhere between 5 and 12 million years. Some estimates push even further back than that. This is not a new disease. The viral ancestor of HIV is ancient beyond comprehension. It was circulating in primate populations long before our genus Homo even existed. So the question shifts. Ancient humans probably did not get HIV specifically, the modern strain that emerged in the 20th century. But did they encounter related viruses? Did they get infected by the ancestors of HIV? Did those infections leave any mark on the human genome? The answer, written in our own DNA, is almost certainly yes. Here is something remarkable that scientists discovered in the last 2 decades. The human genome contains remnants of ancient viral infections, not just hints of them. Actual viral DNA fragments embedded in our chromosomes. Scientists call these endogenous retroviruses, ERVs. They are the molecular fossils of infections our ancestors survived, and they make up roughly 8% of the entire human genome. 8% of your DNA is ancient virus. These viral remnants accumulated over millions of years. Each time a retrovirus infected a cell in a reproductive line, an egg or a sperm, and inserted itself into the genome, that insertion could be passed down to offspring. Over generations, these fragments spread through entire populations. Most of them are broken now, mutated beyond function, but they are still there, sitting silently inside every human cell. This tells us that our ancestors were not just exposed to retroviruses similar to HIV, they were infected by them, repeatedly, over millions of years. The immune systems that survived those infections shaped the immune systems we carry today. Some of the genetic defenses modern humans have against HIV are thought to be inheritances from those ancient battles. There is one gene in particular worth knowing about, TRIM5-alpha. It is an antiviral protein that many primates produce. In some species, it is extremely effective at blocking HIV. In humans, it works only partially. Scientists believe this is because human ancestors faced related, but different retroviruses. Our TRIM5-alpha evolved to fight the threats that were actually present in our environment, not the specific modern strain of HIV that emerged later. We have the armor, but it was fitted for a slightly different enemy. There is also another gene called CCR5. This is a protein on the surface of immune cells that HIV uses as a doorway to enter the cell. In roughly 1% of people of Northern European descent, both copies of the CCR5 gene carry a mutation called CCR5 delta 32. People with 2 copies of this mutation are almost completely resistant to HIV infection. The virus cannot get in. Where did this mutation come from? That question has been debated for decades. Some researchers initially suggested it spread because it offered protection against the bubonic plague in medieval Europe. That theory has since been challenged. A more recent and compelling body of research suggests the mutation may be much older and may have spread due to protection against other viral hemorrhagic fevers or poxviruses that tore through ancient populations. Whatever caused it to spread, the mutation exists. It is sitting in the human gene pool right now in millions of people as a quiet legacy of ancient viral pressure. The specific virus that drove its spread may never be confirmed with certainty. But the fact that a mutation providing near-complete HIV resistance exists in humans at all tells you something. Our ancestors faced viral threats that put pressure on the very same doorways that HIV uses today. Now let's go back to Africa. The direct ancestor of HIV-1, the strain responsible for the global epidemic, is traced to chimpanzees in the forests of Central Africa, specifically in what is now southeastern Cameroon. The chimpanzee version of SIV is called SIVs. Genetic analysis tells us that HIV-1 crossed from chimpanzees into humans somewhere around the late 1800s to the early 1900s in that region. But SIV itself has an even older origin. It is actually a hybrid virus. At some point in the distant past, a chimpanzee was infected by 2 different SIV strains from 2 different monkey species simultaneously, a red-capped mangabe and a greater spot-nosed monkey. Those 2 viruses recombined inside the chimpanzee and created SIVC. That recombination event happened somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago. So the lineage that eventually produced HIV has been evolving, jumping between species, and recombining for over 1 million years. Now consider what our ancestors were doing during that same period of time. Early Homo species were living in and around the same African forests and savannas. They were hunting. They were butchering animals. They were eating primates. Direct contact between blood and broken skin is the primary route by which SIV crosses into a new host. Every time an ancient human butchered a chimpanzee or a monkey, there was an opportunity for transmission. Did IV or a precursor to SIV infect archaic humans? We cannot say with certainty. We do not have preserved viral material from a 2 million-year-old human ancestor. The evidence is indirect. But it is not nothing. Some researchers studying the distribution of ancient endogenous retroviruses in primate genomes believe that related lentiviruses, the family to which HIV belongs, have been jumping into hominid lineages repeatedly over millions of years. Most of those infections likely burned out quickly. The hosts died or their immune systems suppressed the virus before it could establish a long-term foothold. Unlike the modern HIV epidemic, which spread so explosively because of global connectivity, ancient populations were small and isolated. An infection that burned through a band of 30 people and killed them would simply stop there. No cities, no trade routes, no blood transfusions. No way to reach the next population. This is probably why we carry the scars of ancient retroviral infections in our genome, but those infections did not produce civilizational collapses. They hit. Some people died. Some people survived with genetic changes that got passed on. And the population moved on, slightly altered, slightly more defended. Subscribe if this kind of deep history keeps pulling you back, because there is much more where this came from. There is something else worth saying here. The emergence of HIV in the 20th century was not random bad luck. It was the product of specific historical and social conditions. Colonial extraction in Central Africa disrupted ecosystems and human communities in ways that pushed people into deeper contact with primates. Rapid urbanization in cities like Kinshasa created population densities that allowed the virus to spread and sustain itself in ways that would have been impossible in small ancient bands. Unsterilized medical equipment in early 20th century vaccination campaigns in parts of Africa may have amplified early transmission. Global air travel did the rest. The virus was old. The conditions for a pandemic were new. And this is the haunting part. HIV likely crossed into humans multiple times before the 20th century. Genetic evidence suggests there were several independent transmissions of HIV into humans, most of which fizzled out without spreading. The particular transmission that led to the global epidemic happened to occur at exactly the moment in history when the world was connected enough for a new virus to reach everyone. Ancient humans almost certainly encountered viruses from the same family as HIV. Their genomes show the marks of those encounters. Their descendants carry mutations shaped by those ancient battles. But the specific catastrophe that unfolded after 1980 was not ancient. It was modern, made possible by the world humans built. The virus is millions of years old in its lineage. The epidemic is less than a century old in its consequences. And somewhere in the space between those two facts lies the full story of what HIV actually is. Not a punishment, not a mystery from nowhere, but an ancient virus meeting a modern world with devastating